Wentz steps up. Here comes the rush. He is going deep, and it is caught. And in for a touchdown, Deshaun Jackson.
Give the people what they want.
You look at the final score, and it looks close, 23-17. Rube, that wasn't close. That was exactly what we all kind of thought was going to happen.
Played one of the toughest teams in the league to a 6-point game. Really showed a lot of character. No quitting that bunch. Yeah, they got the garbage touchdown with 12 seconds left, and a lot of garbage yards on that last drive. Seattle was just kind of playing a soft zone. But, yeah, this was you forget the score. I mean, this was just an embarrassment start to finish, or at least start to 12 seconds left. Kind of throw out the score. More the same. I mean, all the stuff that we've seen all year just keeps manifesting itself. Another slow start. Nothing down the field. Bad protection for the quarterback. Doug getting away from the running game. I mean, you just go right down the thing. It's like we just keep repeating ourselves, but the same problems keep showing up. Too many penalties, a lack of discipline, drop passes. We're in week 12 now, and 11 games in, and nothing changes. And this coaching staff just, for whatever reason, is unable to, these are mistakes you see in preseason. You clean them up and you go play your season. And we're 3/4 of the way through the season and it keeps happening. It's same thing, just week after week after week.
This is the Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan with Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. Yeah, we're going to go through it again. We're going to go through the loss. The Eagles are 3-7-1. A few different places to start here, but I think we kind of have to look big picture at this thing. This is a bad football team. And for a while, I guess they kept this game close, but man, I mean, even when they finally get something go offensively, it feels like they're hiking up a mountain with a backpack full of rocks, doesn't it? Like everything is tough for this offense, and they just have no answers. The head coach has no answers. The quarterback has no answers. The receivers are non-existent. I mean, it's just a mess.
Yeah, and I think the lack of progress is the most disturbing thing. Is what's gotten better since the Washington game? Actually, the best half they had all year was the first half of the Washington game. It's been downhill. Where they score 17 points in the first half? It's been downhill since then. I mean, that was their best half of football. Was the first half of the year. Well, how the heck is that possible? I don't know what the most what's the most disturbing thing about this game? I don't even know. It's everything. I think to me it's you're talking about Seattle is allowing 343 passing yards a game. It's the second highest in NFL history. If they at that pace, they're on pace to allow the second most yards in history. It's also the second most ever through 11 games. And the Eagles leading wide receiver at 16 yards. We're not talking about the worst this year. They are the worst this year. We're talking about the second worst in history. They didn't take any shots down the field. Everything went to the backs and the tight ends, mainly the tight ends, the backs at the end of the game. And all their wide receivers combined had 46 receiving yards. Fulgham had 16. Alshon had 15. Rager had 11. Greg Ward had 3. John Hightower, speedster, had 1 yard. This is against the worst pass defense ever. This offense's ability or lack of ability to get the ball vertical it's unprecedented. They haven't had a 20-yard catch by a wide receiver in their last 3 games. Well, today
yeah.
they did.
And that was such an emphasis for them, was to get speed. And they went out and they drafted this kid because they thought he was the deep threat. We haven't seen it much. I mean, they had a shot to Dallas Goedert today, and it got DPI because Carson underthrew him. We just haven't seen the deep shots. It's, you can't say losing Deshaun is the reason. He's 33 years old. You probably weren't counting on having him for a lot of the year anyway. So it's been troubling. I mean, the offensive line, we didn't mention, another really bad performance from them. At this point, Jason Peters, I'll have to rewatch, but it on first glance, it didn't look like a very strong performance at right guard in his first start there. Matt Pryor, right tackle, is a problem.
Maybe you get Driscoll back. I don't know how much that'll help. Can't hurt. But I think JP is going to need a couple of years to really kind of learn right guard. He's a work in progress. I think by the end of next year, maybe early 2022, I think he should. The offense is just a train wreck. You have three players that have shown something this year. Fulgham, who was targeted twice. He's been targeted 3 times in the first quarter all year.
He didn't get a target today until the fourth quarter.
You have Miles, who had 6 carries. If Miles doesn't get 30 yards on his first 2 carries, he's done. It's like Doug gets away from Miles faster than Andy Reid ever got away from Brian Westbrook. If you don't get 11 carries, 11 yards, 9 yards, 13 on one of your first couple carries, he's just like, that's it. I think Miles had 1 carry in the second half. This is a 1-possession game for quite a while.
And this is a guy who can break them. I mean, I think he's the only running back in the league with 2 60-yard carries this year. I mean, he can break them, and that's why you keep running them.
70-yard carries.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, he's a home run threat. We've seen that. He could be 7 for 19, and number 8 goes for 70 yards, and that's what the great ones do. He just never gets that chance. Goddard, Fulgham, and Miles, and Goddard, obviously got a ton of balls, but the balance, the concept, the rhythm, there's just the offense is, they're so far away from being a good offense that I don't know if it's fixable. I just don't know if it's fixable right now. Obviously, it's been 11 games and it hasn't gotten any better. Again, this is the 32nd ranked defense in the league. And they played Dallas when they were the 32nd ranked defense. I think they're now 29th. And where they score 15 against Dallas, they faced the worst defense in the league twice, and they scored 15 and 17 points. And the 17 was, the last 7 of them, I should say the last 8 of them were fraud points at the end. But if you can't get yards against the worst defenses in the league, who are you going to get them against? Nobody.
Yeah, I mean, it's painful to watch them on offense right now. And the defense, for the most part, did its job. I know we're going to go through DK Metcalf's big game. For the most part, I mean, they held a really good offense to 23 points.
Yeah, and short field on the one touchdown after the So and very short field on the field goal. So I thought the defense. I mean, there's a couple of things you can look at, but they kept them in the game. But, I mean, I think in my prediction I said, the Seahawks are giving up like 27 a game, but the Eagles are not. They're not going to come close to that. It's demoralizing, and Doug's inability to give any answers, any reasons to make any changes. And today he blamed it on the O-line, all the injuries, basically. He blamed it on the injuries. Every team's got injuries. I'm so tired of hearing that. It's not an excuse. 2 weeks ago, it was like, well, we're getting guys back. Now it's like, well, injuries. It's a convenient. And then he says, well, I'm not making excuses, but, we're really banged up. On offense.
Whenever someone says not to make excuses, that's preceding them making excuses.
Or succeeding it. Yeah, either way. Today was succeeding it. I think that's the right word. But yeah, I mean, they're missing Lane and obviously Brandon Brooks, missing some O-linemen, and Ertz. But they don't have that many more injuries on offense than most teams.
I mean, the line is a problem. The line played poorly. I think what we're seeing, at least the last couple of weeks, is Carson certainly hasn't played well, and he's a big problem. He's far from their only problem. I mean, it's the amount of mistakes we're seeing. It has to be coaching, right? Like, I don't know. Dallas Goedert had a great game with that 4th and 4, and we can discuss the decision to go for it. But how are you not on the same page with your quarterback there? These guys have played together a ton. They've run that play. They ran that play today, earlier in the game. I mean, to not connect on that, how? Like, how does that happen? I don't think anyone has any answers for that.
Yeah, and there's no one answer. There's like 50 answers. There's so many different things at play here. Goddard had a good game. But gosh, you look at the leading receivers. I mean, it's Goddard, Richard Rodgers, Boston Scott, and that was all in the last drive. Backs and tight ends. You're not going to win games like that. You're not going to win games without making big plays. You're not going to win games without, what was the final? I was looking. I think Carson had 5 carries. I think I gave 3 as called runs. That might have been a little generous, but even that way. It's 12 rushing plays and 53 pass plays. I mean,
it's a lot.
Come on, and this was a close game. I mean, this is a one-possession game for a good part of it. Doug's just completely lost it. He's got to give up play calling. I mean, I say this every week, but he can't do it. Just can't do it.
What do you think is going through Jeff Lurie's mind watching that game?
Yeah, I thought about that every time they showed him up there. He's embarrassed. He's embarrassed. I think he's been through a couple of these seasons. He was. Yeah, I think of Ray Rhodes last year in '98. They were 3-13. The offense was worse than this. I mean, I think they averaged 11 points a game. Bobby Hoying, but Bobby Hoying was not Carson Wentz. And then Andy's last year, 2012. What were they? I think they were 3-1. Then they won one more game and they finished 4-12. But they lost 11 of their last 12. This feels like that. And both those times he fired the coach. I mean, he fired Chip after going 7-9. I guess Chip was 6-9. They're going to be lucky to win 6. So this is the third worst, shaping up as the third worst season they've ever had under Jeff Lurie. He's been the owner for 27 years. This doesn't happen. He's embarrassed. I think he's shocked. I think he's a very smart guy, and I think when he looks at the team and doesn't see things getting better and sees a coach that has no answers and no clue in the world how to fix this thing, and he's doing the same thing over and over and over, I think it'd be very difficult for Doug Pederson to keep his job.
Yeah, and you brought up a really good point a week or so ago that this is exactly like the antithesis of what Jeff Lurie wants in his football team. He wants a cutting-edge offense led by a decisive play caller, and they just have none of that. He wants innovation. They have none of it. It really is the opposite of everything he wants out of his football team. And it's hard to imagine if it keeps going like this, that Doug keeps his job. And we know Jeff's loyal, and we know Doug is not Chip, right? He's not a jerk. You're not worried about the culture in the building with him. But something's got to give here. And it's not even to say it's all on Doug. It's funny, we didn't have a chance to listen to the broadcast, but we kind of heard that it was a 3-hour-long Howie Roseman burn session, which I could have predicted based on my chat with Louis Riddick earlier in the week. But, yeah, so there's a lot of blame to go around, but we can't ignore the head coach either because it's a lot. It seems like you're right, he's lost right now. It's tough to watch.
And he does one thing every game that you wouldn't expect the worst coach in the league to do. I mean, going for it on 4th and 4 when a field goal makes it a one-possession game. I mean, and he says, well, we're trying to be aggressive. We're trying to get something going there. What does that even mean?
I'm reading between the lines. I think it means I don't trust my offense to get back down here this close again. We got to go for it now because the best are going to –
anyway.
Yeah, no, I understand you have to score twice, but they were in the red zone. I think his thought was, and I was originally totally against him, I still would have kicked a field goal, but I at least understand because their offense, it's such a grind right now that he probably thought, we're not going to get down here again. The best we can hope for is to score now and then somehow sneak our way in the field goal range later.
So you're saying I expect the offense to get close enough for Jake Elliott to make a field goal, but not close enough to score a touchdown?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's sometimes you just got to go by the book, make it an 8-point game. Because the offense was starting to move the ball. And move the ball better in the second half than the first half. Show some I don't know. I hated that call. And there's been a few of those every week. But yeah, just there's when you look at this offense, it's like, what are they trying to do? What is this offense? What is it? What's its identity? What's its personality? Carson. I mean, and I'm not putting it all on Carson. And Carson did a couple good things today. He had a couple good runs.
I think the problem is Doug is.
Yeah.
I mean, you're dropping back 50-plus times a game with a struggling quarterback. And look, I understand this is going to be a pass-heavy game because you're facing a defense. You think you can take advantage of that. It wasn't working. And, it's tough to watch. And the receivers haven't played well either. I don't want to just make it seem like Carson's missing them. They're not in the right spots at all times either.
Yeah, it's tough day for Rager from that standpoint. Miles had a couple more drops. I'm trying to think if any wide receivers had drops. They just didn't really get targeted.
Alshon
had a drop, yeah. Alshon was targeted twice, Ward once, Hightower once, Fulgham twice, Rager 3 times. I mean, the wideouts were targeted 10 times in a game where Carson dropped back 51 times. You're not gonna beat anybody like that. Maybe the Jets. And Seattle had this game plan of we're just going to chuck it to Metcalf. I mean, he's the only guy who did anything. And Carson had a couple good runs. But, Pete Carroll came in and had a very simple game plan. They knew the Eagles couldn't match points with them. They were content to punt. They've basically done the same thing all 3 games they played against in the last 2 years. They've been, you try to get the ball to Metcalf, run the ball a little bit, punt. You're happy to punt. Their offense isn't going to do anything and go home with a win. They beat them 3 times in a row in Philadelphia, 7 times in a row overall. It's the Eagles' longest losing streak outside the division to a single team since they lost 9 straight to the Bears in the 1980s. 'Tis the season to thrill at the Nissan year-end sales event. Get in, then get out and experience the most riveting ride of the year in a brand new Nissan. These savings on Nissan's lineup are sure to raise your pulse.
10 catches, 177 yards for DK Metcalf. They held him to under 200.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, for a while there, I was doing the comparison. I was pissing people off on Twitter because he was getting close to J-Jaw for his career in one game. I wouldn't be surprised if DK Metcalf looked up how many career yards J.J. Arcega-Whiteside has and said, I'm going after that 214 tonight. And if he caught that one in the end zone, that looked like it was kind of right in his hands, he might have at least been over 200. That guy is so good. And he's going to haunt this franchise. I mean, he's already got two games with 160 or more yards against the Eagles, and he's 23. He's one of the best receivers of football, and he slipped right through the Eagles' hands. And
yeah, he's really good.
he's incredible, and he might end up not even being the best wide receiver the Eagles passed on. Well, so we'll see how that plays out. But he is something else. I think you tweeted something at one point about how. Well, what was your tweet about? I remember a cartoon in what is it, the New Yorker that has all those great cartoons, and it showed a little kid like maybe like 8 years old with a baseball cap down over his face and a bat and his glove, and he he walks into his house and his mom says, "How did the game go?" And he says, "We were winning until the big kids got out of school." And that's what DK Metcalf reminds me of that cartoon. He's just physically on another level. And, Schwartz put Slay on him, and Slay had some good position most of the time, but the dude just went up and caught the ball. He's physical, he's strong, he's big, he's fast. He's like a little bit more physical T.O.
He's tough to guard. He bullied the Eagles. I mean, even early in the game, I think it was Rodney McLeod just bounced off of him. I mean, this dude, I don't think I've ever seen a receiver have other guys bounce off of him as much as DK Metcalf. It's like they hit a brick wall.
Yeah.
He's a tough matchup, man. And Slay, you're right, he had good position. It was still a bad game for Slay. I mean, they're paying him to lock this guy down, and I don't know if anyone can do it, but you got to have a better game than Slay had.
Yeah, he was accountable, and I give him credit for that. He said it was the worst game of his career. Said this is on me. He said all the right things. They're paying him a lot of money. This is a Pro Bowl guy, and you expect more than that. He said, "I got beat on every 50-50 ball." It's true. I think Slay's had a really good year. Doesn't have any picks, but he's dropped one. No, he's dropped a ton of them. But I don't think he's been great. He's not having a Pro Bowl season. I'm not going to say he's a huge disappointment, but he's been good. He just hasn't been great. And tonight he was bad. Yeah,
and it's tough because you see the talent there, obviously. I mean, and they really had no choice. They had a match. It would have been funny to see Avonte Maddox try to cover DK Metcalf, but you can't do that. He would have swatted Avonte Maddox in the third row.
But it's interesting to me how, their game plan was just, Lockett only got targeted 4 times. They didn't run the ball well at all. They averaged 2.5 yards a carry. It didn't matter. It was just get the ball down the field to Metcalf. And, I think he had one that I would call a drop. That would have been about a 30-yarder. And they had the other one in the end zone. It would have been a 25-yarder. I'm not going to call that a drop, but it was right there.
It's a drop.
You want to call that one a drop?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it probably was. He could have had 220.
Yeah, he's going to haunt them. And after the game, he brought up a conversation he had with Jim Schwartz before the game. Apparently, Schwartz kind of was trying to compliment him and said he's like the closest thing he's seen to Calvin. And I guess he said maybe he's not there yet. And that was TK apparently used that as motivation. He also said he wanted to make the Eagles pay for not drafting him, which he has now done in back-to-back games against them. It's tough. It's tough because, J-Jaw is still on the COVID list, but he was inactive the last game before he went on the COVID list. He might never play again for this franchise. And
J-Jaw's got 2 catches this year, an 8-yarder and a 37-yarder as time ran out in the first half. That didn't, and he can't even get on the field now. It's grounds for. I don't know. Maybe it's not grounds for firing to miss like that, but not only did they, miss on one of the best receivers in the league, the guy they got at the same position is one of the worst receivers in the league. It's like 2 colossal, gaffes in one.
Yeah, and I understand the point that it can be unfair to just say, hey, look at that guy that we didn't draft, look at that guy. But some of that gets washed away if the players you do draft end up being decent.
Yeah.
But to just, you're right, to go from one extreme to the other, or, if you're landing them elsewhere, you know what I mean? But the cumulative effect of all this is, it's bad even if you don't point at DK Metcalf. But once you do start to look at the guys they could have had instead of the players they pick, it's even worse. I mean, and then that might not be the fairest way to evaluate a front office, but even if you evaluate them on the players they've drafted, it's still pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, you evaluate them on who are the Eagles' good young players. It's a very short list. So I don't know. We don't have Howie on the docket for this pod. I'm sure we'll talk about him later in the week, but I just would love to be a fly on the wall of Jeff Lurie talking about Howie. And, he's been so loyal to Howie. I mean, he kept him in the organization when he got demoted in 15 for Chip, gave him restored full power, more power than ever. He's never said a negative thing about Howie. I mean, he did say he's got to have a top personnel guy, which I'm not sure he has. But, I mean, this is embarrassing. This is embarrassing for this franchise. This is embarrassing for Howie. And I'm really starting to think, there's a chance he might not survive this, at least not in the role he's in now. I really think there's a chance. That's a topic for another week, but it kind of ties into DK Metcalf. I mean, these are mistakes you just can't make when you're trying to build a team and you're desperate for wide receivers.
And while we're on questionable draft decisions, we got to talk about Jalen Hurts, because there was a lot of talk leading up to this game that Hurts was going to play more. He was going to have extended time without Carson Wentz in the field with him, which makes some sense because it's basically you're out there with 10 guys when you have them both out there. Only 2 snaps, 3 if you include a penalty. He didn't play much. I asked Doug Pederson why, and he basically said, well, we got off to a slow start. We had no rhythm, which doesn't really make any sense because theoretically you could use Jalen Hurts to get rhythm, but it's just strange the way they're trying to shoehorn him in at times. Doug, I mean, he hasn't had a feel for the regular offense, but the lack of feel he's had for when and how to use Jalen Hurts has been awful. He looks like a coach who doesn't want this guy on his team, and he's kind of stuck with him, and he's being forced to play him. I don't know if that's the case, but that's kind of the way it feels. He just has no idea how to use him or when to use him.
Yeah, it's really haphazard, and I don't think it's really fair to the kid. I think it's a really tough ask to play 1 or 2 snaps a game and try to get anything going. It was it was all this talk during the week. It was a report that he was getting more first team reps. He was going to play more. Doug said that was never the case. He was going to play the same as always. So I don't know how that went down. I don't know if who knows. We'll probably find out one day what really happened. But it's like they don't. It's like he's given him like a couple token snaps just to say I used him. But there's no concept to it. There's no rhythm to it. The fact that, I mean, Doug was so defensive when asked about him today. And he's like, well, our first 5 drives, we couldn't get anything going. Why would I use him? What? You would use him to get something going. Yeah. I mean, isn't that the whole point of a change of pace guy? If things aren't going well, we've got this, Heisman runner-up who had these incredible stats in college that we've never really seen. Let's try to jumpstart the offense here. But no, we weren't doing well, so we didn't want to bring him in. It just doesn't make sense. Doug says these things that don't make sense. I think he's got his mind up how he's going to answer certain questions before he even hears the question. But the fact that he was that defensive about Hurts makes me wonder if he's being pressured to use him because he was a second-round pick. I don't know. I don't know what to think of Hurts because he's 3 for 3. He's perfect throwing the ball. He's thrown 3 passes in 11 games. Even at least in the season, he was running the ball with some production.
Yeah, and tonight he throws a pass, completes it for 6 yards, and comes out of the game right away. It
was the Eagles' longest pass to a wide receiver on their first 5 drives.
Yeah, and then they had to get Carson out there for the 3rd down sack and punt the ball away. It doesn't make sense the way they're using him. And the one moment in this game that really kind of showed how ineffective and disjointed it has been is there was one play where Hurts started to run on the field, and then the Eagles had to call a timeout, and I think it was because he had the wrong helmet on. He has 2 helmets. One is they have to have two helmets for these quarterbacks because one has the listening device. So I think he had the wrong helmet, and that kind of shows you, like, man, this thing's all messed up. You don't know what you're doing. You have no sense of it. And the whole pick of Hurts, I wonder about the effect it's had on Carson, and we'll never really know. He's the only one who knows this, but I wonder, and I've wondered this all year, just the presence of a second-round quarterback, how that's played in his mind over, the first 11 games of the season.
Yeah, well, even tonight when he was asked after the game about Hurts, he was kind of like, yeah, it's a difficult thing, you're coming on and off the field, and he did say he embraces it. He said if having him out there can get us going, I'm all in favor of it. But something's changed in Carson, and we're all kind of struggling to figure out what. And I certainly think having Jalen Hurts. I mean, even when we asked him about Hurts, he's like, well, it took a while to get to know him, and there's always kind of like little muted, praise or whatever. I don't know. Maybe I'm looking into it too much. You don't really see them on the sideline a whole lot interacting. You do sometimes. If I was him, I wouldn't want Jalen Hurts here. Something's certainly affecting him mentally. Maybe that's a part of it.
Yeah, and the whole idea of Jalen Hurts, from the moment they picked him until now, it seems like there's just been a complete disconnect between everyone on the pick, on how to use him, on what to say about him, on the effect he's having on the field, in the locker room, in the building. The whole thing's been a mess. And that's not probably their biggest problem, but, man, it's been a mess. And there were guys they could have drafted that would have helped them, and we're playing that game again, and it's probably an unfair game to play. Is Jeremy Chin playing this well in this defense? I don't know, but there were players on the board who would be playing more than 2 snaps a game. I know that for a fact.
I've always said you want a first and second round pick to be contributors as well. You want the first round pick to be a starter. You want that second round pick to be a big time contributor. I don't know when he's going to be a big time contributor. I don't know if he'll ever be a big time contributor. I don't know what I was sitting on that couch during the draft when you texted me and said they just drafted Jalen Hurts. I thought you were kidding. I still do.
I thought when I found out it was a joke. Yeah, and here we are, like months later, and I still don't get it any more than I did back then.
Makes no sense. They don't know what to do with them. Hey, if you're a football fan, you need to check out the new game Sunday night 7 on the NBC Sports Predictor app. There's no reason not to play. It's totally free, and it's got $2 million in guaranteed cash prizes with $100,000 up for grabs every week. Just make 7 predictions about what will happen on Sunday Night Football for a chance to win some serious money. Download the NBC Sports Predictor app or head to NBCSports.com/predictor to make your Sunday Night 7 picks.
Eagles defense gave up 22 points last week, 23 points on Monday Night Football against the Seahawks. They're not the problem. They're just not. I mean, maybe they can get some more turnovers. They haven't had those. Maybe they can make some more big plays. But it kind of feels like the offense is just letting them down right now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I don't think they played great, but it's very tough to and you look at Seattle, they had, a field goal drive that was 33 yards. They had another one that was 52 yards. Another one that was 3 yards, so they had a great, goal line stand. They don't get turnovers. 3 interceptions in 11 games is mind-blowing. They don't get takeaways. I think they're fine. Considering there's not a lot of elite talent on this defense, they're hanging in there. They keep the Eagles in games. If the Eagles' offense was just average, this would probably be just average. They'd be a 7-4 team right now. Just average or 7-3-1 or something. But I think there's not much I can say negative about the defense. Obviously, you'd like to see Slay, make a couple plays on the ball and not give up those big plays. I think 4 of the Seahawks' top 5 longest plays were to Slay. They only had two plays over 20 yards, 52 to Metcalf, the touchdown, and then the 31-yarder, and then the 19-yarder and a 17-yarder. I mean, that was really their offense. And Carson had a nice touchdown run, 16-yarder. But there's not a lot of negative I can say. I thought they got good pressure. They contained Russell Wilson when he tried to run. That was big. Didn't give up big plays. Played well enough to win.
Yeah, I mean, that's all you can kind of ask for right there. I thought the D-line did a decent job. Derek Barnett had 2 fourth-down stops. I mean, I thought they did their job. We're going to get to Dave's Positivity Corner, but there was something I wanted to mention I forgot. Playing Alshon Jeffery right now is just coaching malpractice. I don't care what he gives you.
I couldn't
You're
agree
playing
more.
him over Travis Fulgham.
Yeah. Well, you know what Doug said the other day? He's meant a lot to us over the past few years. I think in my 10 observations, I said, just you can't cut him because of the dead money. I understand that. He's not going to be here next year. Send him home. You know what? Say thanks, Alshon. Thanks for 2017. Go home. It's over. Bye.
Take Jason Peters with you. Nate Herbig's the new right guard.
Yeah. It's this, and you have a GM who has said, we can't make decisions based on sentimentality, and then you're just keeping these relics around. I don't know if Alshon's healthy or injured still with the foot or not rehabbed or rusty or out of shape. I don't know what it is, but he's out there taking reps from a kid like Travis Fulgham, who at least gives you a chance to make some plays. And I think Fulgham played about half the snaps. He was right around the same number as Alshon, at least in going into the fourth quarter. But it's crazy and it sounds like they're not. I don't know if Fulgham's in the doghouse. The last 2 times Doug's been asked about him, he's made a reference to he's got to work. He's got to keep working.
It seems like there's something there, yeah. There's
something going on there. He said the same thing both times, which he doesn't usually say stuff like that. I think that's his way of saying, he's got to, maybe work harder. I don't know. I mean, it's a question for Doug tomorrow, but the guy makes plays. He hasn't the last 3 weeks.
And he might get better.
Yeah.
Like Alshon
ain't getting better.
You're not getting better. Like at least Fulgham, he can get better. You can grow with him. He's going to be here next year. It doesn't make sense to me. And the same thing with Jason Peters at right guard. I think it's better than having him at left tackle, but I'd honestly rather see Nate Herbig play.
Yeah,
and that's more nitpicky than Jeffrey over Fulgham. I realize that, but
well, it's similar. It's similar though in that you're sitting here at 3-7-1. You're in third place and about to be in fourth place in the worst division in history. Let's see the young guys play. What do you have to lose? What future is there in Alshon Jeffery? And I'll tell you what, if Deshaun was healthy, he'd be playing. And he'd be taking steps away from – and, Hightower, I understand he's played soft in some spots. But this guy had a couple 50-yard catches early, and he can't get on the field right now. He needs reps. He needs to learn. He needs to get as much playing time as he can. And I mean, we're gonna talk to him in training camp next year. How much did you learn last year? Well, I learned a lot early in the season, but then I was behind Alshon. What is going on here? This franchise's loyalty, and you wrote a great piece about it last week. Their loyalty to older, broken down, beat up, overpriced players is it's mind-boggling. It just can't happen.
I mean, we've got Corey Clement out there taking snaps. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Miles Sanders touches the ball 8 times. We got Corey Clement out there taking snaps.
I think Corey's longest run, or his one run, was longer than Miles' longest run.
Yeah.
But that's not the point. I understand that.
That's not the point.
I'm just being pedantic. There's a lot I just don't understand. And usually with really bad teams, you say, it's really easy to kind of, this sucks. This team is just kind of mysteriously bad. And I get that they don't have a lot of great players, especially, on either side of the ball. But there's just strange things happening with this team. Guys regressing. Guys, just getting a ton of playing time one week and nothing the next. It's just weird stuff. I don't think anybody has any idea what to do, from Howie to Doug. It's going to be an interesting January for this franchise. There's going to be changes, big ones.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting Dave's positivity corner because
short Dave's positivity.
It's getting harder and harder. What do you got?
I thought it was probably Derek Barnett's best game, although, he had a sack. He had 2 hurries. He had a couple quarterback hits. He had the 4th down stop. If he can play this way every week, you have a Pro Bowl defensive end. They got a decision to make with him, and consistency hasn't been there. But you see when he's on his game, the guy's really, really good.
Yeah, maybe he comes back on a different deal. He's not going to be back on that tender, I can't imagine.
So I think it would make sense. I think he'd be amenable to it. He's not going to get that anywhere else. So, I think that's positive. After that, boy, I don't know, Dave.
Alex Singleton made a couple plays, didn't he?
Made a couple plays.
Dallas Goedert made some plays.
Yeah. He also took the blame for that. Well, Carson and he both took the blame for the –
It was probably more on Goddard.
I thought it was more on Goddard. I think Carson was just being nice.
Rich Rod
caught some passes again. He's not bad. Not a bad receiver.
Not bad. Yeah. Not a great blocker. Not a bad receiver.
Not a blocker. Boston Scott, I like that kid. It was all garbage time, but I'd like to see him involved in the passing game when it matters a little more than he has been, because I think he's a good little third down weapon. I'd like to see him incorporated a little more. But other than that, I'm trying to think on defense, because I thought the defense wasn't terrible. They kept the Eagles.
Robbie Coleman. I thought he had, honestly, probably his best game with the Eagles.
Yeah, he was okay.
I thought he played well. I'll have to rewatch, but whenever you're not noticing the nickel, he's probably playing pretty well.
I thought Fletch might have had his best game of the year. I thought Fletch was really good.
Okay.
I thought he got some really good pressure. I think he did have a sack. He had a couple hurries. I don't know. I thought he was solid. I thought he was really good against the run. The Seahawks played the kind of game where they wanted to take shots deep and run the ball, and they really weren't able to run the ball. They kind of, it's like all or nothing type offense. Let's take those shots and then run the ball. They couldn't run the ball. It's hard to run the ball, and they tried a couple, misdirections and stuff, and the Eagles actually sniffed those out, which for the first time, so that was good.
It also kind of felt like they knew what they had to do to win this game.
Yeah,
and they did it.
Yeah. Pete Carroll was good at that. He's not going to get out of that framework of here's what we're going to do. We're not going to do anything else, and we're going to go home with a win. He's got Doug's number, man.
Yes, he does. Oh, another good thing for the positivity corner. I missed a deer on my drive home.
It was a lot of deer out. I had one in my front yard coming home tonight.
Yeah, 12:30, middle of the night, deer crossing the road. Luckily,
wouldn't the middle of the night be like 3:30 a.m.? I think 12:30 is like the beginning of the night.
Depends on what time you go to bed.
The average person goes to bed, like I would say, between 10:30 and 11:30. Average person.
I go to bed at 8:30, so this is way past.
Well, even for 12:30 to be the middle of the night, even if you went to bed at 8:30, you'd still have to get up at 4:30 for that to be. I do.
Yep. Well, if you go to bed at 8:30, you're waking up at 4:30. All right, let's end this. We're delirious. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, do us a favor, rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. We're going to keep doing these. look, the season is what it is, and there's a lot to break down. I mean, as bad as it is, there's plenty to talk about, and we're going to keep doing it.
And thanks for listening. Appreciate it.
For Rube, I'm Dave. We'll talk to you soon.